Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation. I'm Sasha Brown. I'm the Director of Professional Development at the CFDA. And today we're hosting a conversation called The Gold Standard, Unlocking the World of Ethical Sourcing and Production of Sustainable Jewelry. Now, before I hand it over to our experts, I want to just remind everyone that similar to our previous programming, there will be a moderated Q&A at the end. So please, during the conversation, submit your questions to us and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the hour. And it is my great pleasure to introduce to you all our moderator for today, Alexandra Hart. Alexandra is a metals artist, designer goldsmith, advocate, and activist for responsible sourcing. She's currently serving as the Executive Director of Ethical Metalsmiths, as Board Secretary of Compassion for African Villages, as a Rotarian, as a teacher, and as a mentor of teenage girls. So welcome, Alexandra, and thank you so much for leading this conversation for us today.
Sasha, thank you so much. And thank you all for the opportunity to represent Ethical Metalsmiths at this truly important conversation. It's a thrill to be here. Absolutely. We really do have an incredible lineup for you today, from design to supply in the jewelry industry. And what I'd like to do is introduce our panelists, and they will briefly describe their business, and then we will move right into the questions. So from the top, Beth, Bugdaycay, it's really great to have you. If you could briefly describe.
Sure. Well, I'm a jewelry designer, and I do mostly retail, direct to consumer, with a little bit of wholesale.
Great.
Oh, the brand Foundrae.
Yes.
Okay.
Terrific. And Melissa Joy Manning.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm a jewelry designer. I've had my company for 25 years and I'm very happy to be here.
Terrific. And we have Kristina Buckley Kayel.
Yes, hi everyone. Pleasure to be here today. I'm the Managing Director for the Natural Diamond Council. I've been with the organization for just over 3 years. Before that, I was at a decade at Van Cleef & Arpels. So moving from the brand to the entire category of diamonds has been a very fascinating journey so far, and I look forward to discussing it with you.
Incredible. It's great. Laura Galvis.
Hi, everyone. I'm the market specialist or market development executive for the Alliance for Responsible Mining and the Mine Initiative, and I work well bringing our initiative closer to everyone, really the designers, and I'm a designer as well.
Excellent. And Brian Cook.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm working as an exploration geologist since 1987, precious metals and gemstones, mainly in Brazil. My wife and I, my Brazilian wife, Kendra, we created a family-owned business, Nature's Geometry, where we are involved in mining, cutting, processing, with a lapidary studio. We create jewelry and design jewelry through core jewelry. So it's my privilege to be here. Thank you.
Great. So let's kick off the conversation. Let's start with Melissa. As one of the first major jewelry brands to deliver sustainable collection, how have you seen the industry evolve over your 25+ year career? And name some good and some bad if you have any.
That's a huge question. Thanks.
Yes.
I mean, I think one of the biggest changes I can think about is transparency in the industry. I think when I first started, e-commerce barely existed, or really didn't at that time at all. Social media didn't exist. So I think just overall transparency from supply chain and what was actually happening was more occluded than it is now. So when I started learning about what was happening in the industry, just started to try to make as many responsible choices as I could, and would speak to people about it. And it was kind of like the crazy person in the room. Like, people would walk away from me, they'd feel bad because of their consumerism, so many different experiences I had like that throughout the years. And then, you know, I remember standing up my first day as a CFDA member, asking the membership what we were going to do about responsibility in the industry. And it was like crickets, and we had no plans, and it was very kind of quiet. But then through a lot of work, after we launched the sustainability committee, there's been a huge shift in the industry. I think from not only designer perspective, but end consumers who have really, because of the transparency now that exists or is starting to exist, people are able to learn a lot more and bring a lot more questions to the table, push the supply chain to bring about better raw materials to the table so that we have better choices as designers. And that's been really interesting and exciting to see. I think one of the bigger challenges that exists, though, is the greenwashing that now currently exists, that is rampant throughout the industry. Where a lot of brands have taken it upon themselves to use it as a selling tool, which I get, you know, consumer culture, but it's challenging sometimes to how we're going to actually move the needle and advocate for real change if we're just paying attention to things as a marketing space and a marketing angle, rather than truly how you build and incorporate these practices into your business that create collective change throughout the industry. So I think there's tons of good, and there are some challenges, but I think if we work together and continue to have conversations like this, and we'll begin to continue to push the needle and advocate for more change. And, you know, I won't be the lone crazy person in the room anymore. There will be a lot more of us having these conversations and caring about what we're making and how we're finding it and what people are actually buying, because as consumers, we can change the supply chain. And I've kind of started to see that happen. And as I said, it's super exciting.
Well, and how interesting, what a great point that now that the demand is there, the greenwashing is getting in the way. So incredible point. And Melissa and Beth, how do you define being a responsible brand? And how do you hold yourselves accountable to the process of becoming a more responsible brand?
I mean, I guess the reason why I wanted to participate is because I felt like I wanted to show what it likes to be at the beginning of this path, as opposed to Melissa, where it's like she's, you know, been doing this for 25 years. And I think that can be really intimidating for other people to see, and then to feel like that they can't measure up. And so I want to make it clear for me that I think that we all have to just be focused on continuous improvement, and that if you don't have the expertise, there's so many people that you can lean on. And so, for example, like we're going to go ahead and apply for the Responsible Jewelry Council because the expertise is there. And so I feel like if you're willing to do the work, then there are people out there that know more than you, you know, obviously, and that they can help guide you in a way to be that is that allows you to do business in a commercially sustainable way, but that also allows you to be responsible in your choices and your sourcing choices, without compromising the design. You know, so it's these three things together that you know, as a designer and business owner, that you have to be really aware of.
I mean, I agree with Beth. I think design should always come first, right? But good design solves problems. And one of the biggest problems we have is our impact on the environment and on our culture and people. So I think we solve that problem by making better product. And for me, what it looks like is that, you know, that's a really interesting question for anyone, right? In our day-to-day lives, what does responsibility look like? And to Beth's point, I think starting in a way that's, sorry to be cheesy, sustainable for you, and that you can build into your business. Like, we didn't start out green certified and with all the things that we have in place now. We started small. And then when that became possible and it became measurable in business that it was actually possible to make those choices and spend more on certain things, and we started doing other things and other things and other things and other things. And so I think that it is, and it has been always intimidating for people. Like, how do I start to be responsible? And it's, you know, one choice that leads to more choices. And, you know, we have this idea especially in the United States, like we should be perfect. And if we come out and say things, people are going to start throwing stones. And that's true, right? So you've got to be ready. I mean, Beth and I have had this conversation to be able to have that dialogue with someone who comes at you with, well, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? And those just push you to be better. And I mean, we continue to learn. How we hold ourselves accountable is, you know, continuing to look at how and why we do things and what better choices we can make when things come on the industry or come on our radar that we weren't aware of. How do we embrace them? Do they make sense for us? And I think that it's collectively of how we're going to make the change. So making sure that part of also being responsible is sharing all the information that we learn and continuing to be open so that as a group, we can advocate for more change, because I can't move the needle by myself with the small amount of jewelry I make. So it's like, how do we as a group say, this is what we want, and make the industry answer to that, and have the consumers become educated enough to also ask for those things. I think responsibility just means following your heart and doing what matters to you, and then figuring out how to incorporate it into your business.
And building with a team. I mean, here we are building a team of the viewers of the webinar as well. We will do this together, the journey, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Laura, I've got a big one for you. So really, there's a lot of folks on this call who might not even know really how exemplary Fairmined Gold is. So if you can help start with, you know, what it is, how much is available, where it's sourced, and something about the standards, like how challenging it is to become Fairmined certified.
Okay, yes, this is a big one, as you said. And well, saying that Fairmined is an assurance level. It certifies that gold comes from empowered, responsible, and artisanal and small-scale mining organization. It was created by the Alliance for Responsible Mining, an NGO from Colombia that is globally recognized as a leader and pioneer in the responsible ESM industry. They're responsible for the Alliance for Responsible Mining works throughout the industry. Work starting smaller organizations want to improve their practices or even legalize, to organizations that have completely transformed. And these organizations at the highest assurance level are the ones that are Fairmined certified. These organizations made transformation, the big efforts, and the biggest investments. And so recognition for this, they are awarded the premium, thing that is paid for them, each gram of gold at refined and authorized suppliers purchase. And we also ensure that they get access to the market and a fair price. We, of course, throughout the supply chain with the mines, with the refineries who will purchase gold to be ready for designers to build their jewelry or whatever the design is, the solution for gold plating, something that they can find in Fairmined Gold. And then the designers take it and transform it into the final products. And this way, gold is supporting the communities, and it's also completely traceable from the mine to the final design. So this is roughly what Fairmined is all about. I'm sure there are gonna be a lot of questions. We'll get into that, and I'll be happy to reply anything after this. How much is available? It's less than 1%. I believe about 0.00001% of the production of gold that is out there annually. And well, it's important to see that in the industry, about 20% of what is produced annually comes from artisanal small-scale mining gold, but out of that, about 80% is not legal, you know, comes from irregular miners, or so that's where we make we in the process right now of reactivating after the pandemic many of the mines. We currently have 6 certified mines. All of them are located in Peru and Colombia. And the next one was, what are their challenges? The challenges and the things that the mines have to comply with. There are four main things. Of course, Fairmined is for the mining organizations and to ensure the traceability. And so for general aspects.
Uh-oh. Did we lose her?
Laura,
Yeah.
you still there? Okay, good.
Oh, did you?
You just dropped off at the end.
Oh, okay. So I was talking about four general aspects or four main aspects of the Fairmined initiative or the Fairmined standard. The first one is organizational development. We have to ensure that the organizations are formalized, all of their miners formalized, and this is one of the biggest challenges for the industry. Also, in this organizational development is what the organizations plan to do with this streaming. They must invest it in improving their production process and also improving the well-being of the community and the miners. Second aspect is social development. Organizations can have no links with complex situations, with child labor. They have to implement non-discriminatory policies because this is a male-dominated industry. So avoid gender violence and support women. And the aspects is improving working condition, warranting the well-being of all the workers, ensuring they work according to law, health and safety at work regulations, have a stable job, a salary, and this is very rare in industry. Also, and the fourth aspect is, of course, the environmental protection, which is one of the biggest ones, to develop progressive plans for the reduction of chemical use. We know mercury is a big issue when we are talking about small-scale mining. Is one of the biggest causes of contamination is this industry. So we want to make sure that chemical and procedures and technologies are using the proper ways to handling and ensuring that a minimal impact is caused, and also to recover the environment and ensure that the mine will be operating on a small scale that causes the lowest environmental impact, and also to protect the water sources. So that is in general what it entails for the mining organization. It is certainly the most challenging and difficult task for a small-scale mining organization, but it implies a huge investment for them. And for this is that we need the demand and the support of the designers in order to be able to certify more mines.
It's incredible. It sounds absolutely comprehensive and incredible. And so one of the questions that comes up for designers, if you don't mind spending a moment on this, Laura, talk about the relationship, the value differences between recycled gold and Fairmined. If you can just touch on a couple of issues that designers should know from your perspective.
Yes. Well, this is one of the most controversial issues when we're talking about gold and the different gold sourcing that we find out there. And I want to start by saying that the most important thing for any of us that are starting in this sustainability or ethical or responsible journey is to start questioning where the sources come from. And as Beth was saying, whatever we can do to have better practices to be more responsible is a gain for the world, right? But now into the subject of Fairmined and recycling gold and what is our value proposition. The first one is the positive impact that we are generating in the community. When we're about gold, Fairmined gold and responsibly sourced gold, we're talking about environmental, economic, and social development. So we are talking about ethical gold. We cannot talk about something being ethical if we are leaving or excluding the communities from the conversation, right? So it is the way that has.
I'm sorry, you guys, I have no idea why that's coming through. If that just came, I'm sincere apologies. What just happened?
So the Fairmined Gold has the potential to transform the supply chain and to transform gold into a force of good for this community. We have to consider that, as I was saying, small-scale mining counts for 20% of the production, but it represents 90% of the workforce. So it really is impacting a lot of people, and we're talking about 20 million people worldwide that are in this industry. A second value proposition that we have is origin and traceability. So all gold has to come somewhere and have been extracted at some point. And the thing with recycled gold is that it can be difficult to know when it was extracted and really where it comes from. In many cases, you know, it's.
I have no idea how to turn it off. I'm so sorry. This is like,
don't worry.
Really bad.
In many cases, these are pieces of jewelry that we are bringing to a smith or to a designer that we want to repurpose and transform. And that is perfectly, you know, that's what recycled gold should be like. But recycled gold is understood as gold that has been refined. For the main industry standards, both gold recovered from consumer products, I mean like jewelry, and gold recovered as a byproduct of manufacturing can be refined again and labeled as recycled. But this doesn't mean that recycled gold is the same as old gold. It is possible for recycled gold to have made a very short journey from the mine becoming recycled gold, and it's just a small loophole that is in this industry, right? I mean, there are some recent reports and investigations that demonstrate that the use of recycled gold in supply chains is also a way in dirty gold. You know, so this uncertainty is the issue here. There is a report by an NGO called Global Witness that highlights that it's very reasonable to fear that materials extracted illegally or linked with human rights abuses, corruption, environmental damages can find their way into a global supply chain because they can be cleaned up through these recycled gold loophole. Because in recycled gold, we only look back at to the point where gold was returned for a second refining. So unlike diamonds, this is very easy, and diamonds and stones, gold is very easily transformed, and this uncertainty, well, it is an issue. Another value proposition of Fairmined Gold is that it has an emotional value associated with the product. You know, knowing what gold comes, in many cases, the brands can even visit this mine and establish a direct human and emotional connection with the miners who extracted their gold. So they can be linked to this story and with the mining community. And this is a story that we can share and that people can be proud of. You know, many times we are purchasing jewelry because of an important aspect, you know, an emotional thing. It's a purchase for, I want to gift it. It's an important moment. And what is more beautiful than to have a beautiful story all the way through that supply chain as well, and to be aware of it. And finally, I was saying of how there is not a lot of Fairmined Gold out there, but it also makes it more exclusive, no? So there's certain brands that have this standard that comply with everything, and so not everyone is using it right now, and exclusivity is certainly another one of the value propositions of Fairmined Gold.
Yeah. Incredible. Thank you, Laura, for sharing that. It's not obvious on the front of the idea of recycling, so thank you for covering that as well. And I remind you all that this will be followed up with a lot of the resources which we're touching on, of course. So let's jump over to Brian. Again, supply and design here. What does ethical mining of gems entail? And do you your work directly with the ASM miners? What do the miners say they want?
Ethical mining, better termed responsible mining. Laura just answered the question quite well, but it's so complex and confusing that I will circle back and go over this again. I'm going to stick with artisanal small-scale mining. For example, in the colored gemstone industry, which includes crystals and minerals, approximately 80% of global production is from artisanal small-scale miners. And in the gold sector and diamond sector, which are different worlds, up to about 20% is artisanally mined. So the impact is tremendous. It affects 150 million people at least globally, and typically they're in remote and poor communities. So it's quite important. So responsible mining, I think you need to look at what's happening at the source. What is happening on the ground? And as Laura talked about, is there human rights violations going on? Forced labor, indentured labor? Is there child labor going on? Is there violence happening? Is there corrupt politicians and other folks laundering money? There's a lot of bad things that can happen around these resources because they're so valuable. 2, basic safety. You look at, is there basic safety happening around these mining communities? Is there shoes and boots? Is there hard hats? Dust masks to protect from the silicosis. It's a horrible condition that happens from breathing dust constantly. So basic safety concerns, that's the second thing you look at. 3, don't marginalize these miners, legalize. Formalization, as Laura said, is a key process that the industry is moving towards to help that happen through organizations like ARM and the craft code that was developed. But for example, 10 years ago, I gathered villagers and miners and the city officials. I called a meeting just to try and explain the tendency towards formalization that governments are trying to move towards. Of course, there was great resistance. They don't trust the government. It's difficult to change from the old ways to something new. But once I was able to legalize my area and claim, I was able to show the other landowners how to do the same process. And that's a big step. It's not easy, it's confusing, it takes resources and money. So once that happened, for example, the next thing that happened was an organization, a cooperative for the miners. So all these steps eventually lead to more empowerment to these communities that have these resources. And that goes to, once there's formalization, that allows for the buying and selling of stones and the movement of stones legally across borders and even legal exports. That immediately, what that does, it begins to create the paper trail or the paper chain. If you can't do a blockchain, you can start with a paper chain. And for example, if I have a small export from this region, we register it, there's a barcode, it goes to the federal department that deals with that. So all these aspects of formalization eventually give greater access of the mining communities and their resource to the global marketplace. And as buyers and consumers and makers of jewelry, that is essential for the transparency that everybody's clamoring for. So as we go forward, these things are getting better. And I would say last but not least, what is the environmental impact? So another hurdle to legalize is to get the environmental licensing. It's confusing, expensive, and frustrating as hell, but it can happen. I say, in my case, I question the industry this. We need those stones, we need those metals, we need them. We take them from the ground, we take them from the earth. What as an industry are we doing to give back? So when you talk about environmental impact, beyond just the licensing and the legal framework, what in addition are you doing to benefit the land? So I think those are all things that essentially address what responsible mining can be. And obviously around the world, there's so many different conditions and levels of need and styles of mining that is very complex. But the key to the whole thing is transparency and telling the truth. I think that's as people, as a person that interfaces with the mining community and other people around the world that are buyers of those stones, we have the opportunity to reinvest in those communities. And you asked about what the miners want. Well, so I called the miners this week with that question, and I talked to the miners where I work in the middle of Bahia, out in the outback, and there's up to 3,000 miners working on that mountain range for rutilated quartz and smoky quartz. And then I also called miners in the Amazon, where I'm working on projects with tin and topaz miners in Rondônia. And essentially the answer was the same. One and two, they're both sort of equal. One, food. So yeah, we need food because we're not always able to feed our families. If we're not producing, we need help with that. So that's A. B is, well, we need resources to be mining because the mining brings the money, brings the resources. We need money for explosives. We need money for equipment. Basic safety equipment is often the last thing to get bought because they have to invest in the tools to do the mining. And I think if I called Africa, I'd get pretty much the same answers. So that's kind of artisanal small scale mining.
That's amazing. And thank you for calling them up. And here I was imagining, well, they want access to more markets but actually they just need to feed their families. And that is a reminder to us all that we want to pay for the quality, the traceability, and the support of a group who is actually putting the environment back together and caring for their own home. Is that right?
Yeah, there's so much good work happening today and so many resources that we'll share. But for example, the Craft Code, which is part of the Alliance for Responsible Mining, is a beautiful open source tool to set up things that can be done to help the mining communities improve all sectors of it, whether it's environment, mining standards, connection to the global market. And it's not a certification, but it is a tool that can be used for constant improvement. And that's all we can do now, is just continually try to help improve as we go forward. So it's an exciting time for our industry if we take that challenge to help create the transparency and linkage and connection to these sources. Okay. And I guess finally, I think responsible mining is respect for the people, for the communities, and the land. And that's what we're striving for.
Wonderful. And Kristina, so more likely larger scale, but maybe some small scale, but now possibly more large scale. Question for you. What progress has the diamond industry made to ensure responsible and conflict-free mining and transparency? And as question number two, what are the values associated with working with natural diamonds versus lab grown, if you can cover that as well?
Okay, thank you. Well, first off, just, especially with what Brian and Laura was saying, a lot of the terms and the philosophies and and the ambitions still are quite similar to what we experience at the larger scale of diamond production. As Brian pointed out, artisanal mining for within the diamond sector is about 15 to 20%, and it tends to happen in less stable countries. But there are some amazing NGOs that our member companies also work with, and like the Diamond Development Initiative, and De Beers, one of our member companies, is leading Gem Fair and really ensuring the implementation of best practices and formalization of the most humane and ethical working conditions and the like. But for me to step back, the NDC representing, the majority of global diamond production, the industry, no industry is perfect, but the industry still, I think there are some prevailing misperceptions and some outdated narratives. But the industry has undergone tremendous progress over the 20 plus years. And I think most people don't realize it's one of the most regulated industries in the world. And I think that's exemplified by the fact that, the NDC even existing. So the Natural Diamond Council was formed about 6 years ago, and it's essentially the major diamond producers, major competitors coming together because they're united in their, understanding of the progress the industry has made, but joining forces, they can really globalize and set the baseline for continuous improvement and development of business operations across the supply chain and across all stakeholders, within the supply chain. So I can't think of any other industry that you see that kind of banding together and, really finding the commonalities of the United Nations Sustainability Goals that they can stand behind and work towards collaboratively in achieving. So, having, been with the NDC and working in proximity with the member companies, what I can say, at least for the modern diamond recovery sector, is that it can only exist if it works sustainably. The operations are rooted in symbiosis with, local governments and communities, indigenous communities. And it takes 10 years to open a mine, and they have to open with closure and rehabilitation plans in place. And so with that, they need to ensure that they're providing high quality, safe jobs, that they're, providing transferable skills that can last beyond the operation of the mine and the operations, provide free education, healthcare, infrastructure, and so on. And you think about the multiplier effect of that, and that really impacts the livelihood and well-being of employees and families, in the tens of millions. And Melissa spoke about this earlier, just the amount of progress that has been made. There's the NDC and everything that the NDC stands for, but there are important regulatory bodies like the RJC, the Responsible Jewelry Council, that has done, it's the only independent auditing body that, verifies, through third-party assessment, that business ethics have been conducted at the most stringent levels across the supply chain. And this is with manufacturers, retailers, designers, and the like. And they've been really instrumental in the advancement of the industry. You also have the UN mandated Kimberley process. Over 85 countries participate in that. It's also not perfect, and it's constantly being, examined how it can improve, because a lot of it's about consensus and dealing, with 85 countries. But what it has been able to achieve over several years is that, over 99.8% of diamonds are certifiably conflict-free that come into the marketplace. And, I think people need to realize it's illegal. It's completely illegal to sell a conflict, diamond. And another governing body is the Jewelry Vigilance Committee, the JVC. They provide legal education and compliance guidance also to all stakeholders across the supply chain. So I hope that paints a picture of just how much advancement, and consumers can feel assured that when they're investing in a diamond, in a natural diamond, that there's been a lot of vigilance for it to even get to the retail store to begin with. And the note on transparency too, I mean, I'm totally scratching the surface since we only have a few minutes to speak on this, but we at NDC, we have a publishing platform, naturaldiamonds.com, and it speaks to all of this. And what's important is that, it's very easy nowadays to make claims that are unsubstantiated, but we have the data, we have the research, we have, first, party accounts of people from the countries. And, as Brian mentioned, a lot of the places, especially where diamonds are mined, are from remote regions of the world where, communities, indigenous communities would probably have to travel elsewhere to find economic, viability in their livelihood. But we're able to make those communities thrive, and again, beyond the operation of the mines themselves. So I encourage you to visit naturaldiamonds.com to learn more. And if this is very random, but if there are any fans of Kissing Booth, the show, the actor Tyler Perez is actually in Botswana right now. And that's the other thing too, diamonds, I think people think diamonds mostly come from Africa. Yes, the majority do. But they also come, from Canada, Western Australia. The biggest cutting and polishing center is in India. But if you can see in his Instagram stories, just a firsthand account of what modern diamond mining looks like. So I thought that'd be just a fun way to experience it. Then the second question, yes. The differences between lab grown and natural diamonds. So what's important with what we do at the NDC is just to ensure consumers are given the facts, education, so then they can make the decision that is best for them. The lab grown diamonds, yes, are optically and chemically the same as natural diamonds, but there are some distinct differences, and I would put them in three areas: the origin, the value, and then again, transparency. So, when you think about origin, natural diamonds created billions of years ago, deep in the earth, that were risen to the earth's surface through prehistoric volcanic activity. And just because of their, natural formation, every natural diamond is unique, like a snowflake, like a fingerprint. It's actually the oldest thing you will ever own, wear, or touch, which is pretty cool phenomenon to think about. Lab-grown diamonds, yes, they're created above ground. They are created in microwave reactors, in factories, and they can be done, within, if I think the technologies become even better, but they can be created under 2 weeks. And then, replicating the conditions of the earth above ground, which I'll speak to in a little bit. So, the origin piece of it also speaks to the value proposition and what the differences are. I mean, natural diamonds are finite. They're becoming increasingly rare. Our most recent research on it is, for annual global output of polished 1 carat plus diamonds would fit in 1 exercise bowl, and that continues to decline. So with that, they are increasing in price, they're increasing in value, and historically they've maintained their inherent value and financial value, and of course there is the intangible emotional value as well, and it really makes it an ideal heirloom. Whereas, with lab-grown diamonds, again, they're an industrial product. They're being produced at mass. They're gaining economies of scale, and their prices continue to drop. In fact, Paul Szymanski, he's an industry analyst, just reported last month that the rate at which the value keeps, dropping is faster than in previous years. And it's great, to have an affordable, offering. But one is an affordable trend, and the other really is just by the virtue of what it stands for, a luxury product. And my last, note is the transparency piece of it. I think, a consumer can feel really confident when buying a natural diamond, you know, and by the time it's gone to the retail store, it's really undergone a vigilant process across the supply chain. And there is, you know, more technology to really, you know, experience that traceability of the journey. And, you know, that when you invest in a diamond, you're investing in communities as well. You know, 80% of the benefits of our member companies go directly back to the communities from which the diamonds originated. And then there is the environmental piece of it too, and really investing in, you know, eco-conservation and biodiversity protection. Whereas, you know, with lab-grown diamonds, there are a lot of claims made, a lot of eco-claims made. The reality is, you know, to replicate the earth condition requires a tremendous amount of energy, and, you know, and heat, hotter than the surface of the sun, and, you know, and a lot of water to cool that. And the supply chain isn't always so clear. You know, most are still produced from China and India. But it's just important that the consumer, you know, and circling back to Melissa's early point, just about greenwashing, and just to get the facts, to get the education before you invest in what is most likely a milestone purchase for you.
Can't thank you enough for talking about these issues that keep coming up and are more and more urgent right now, you know, in our supply. So opening up to the group, I'm going to jump to, if you want to just sort of say what you would love, what is your dream or your wish for a more responsible jewelry industry? And just raise your hand or speak out what is your ultimate goal and dream? And then we'll go to Q&A.
Well, go ahead, Brian.
You're on mute.
Your mic is, yeah.
Brian, you're muted.
Since I get a wish, and I'm working with the artisanal mining communities, and I think our industry has a real opportunity to do something that benefits people and land in a big way. And so where I'm working in Bahia, for example, mines are not sustainable. They just aren't. And I don't use the word sustainable lightly. And I don't use it when I talk about stones and business so much. But what came up was food is a key issue for all these communities. So why not? What I'm doing is I'm initiating regenerative agriculture as a way to link with mining communities. It will produce food security. It hits all kinds of boxes on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but it's something that will be there lasting if it's done correctly once the resource runs out, because mines are not sustainable. Metals and stones run out. But if you implement regenerative agriculture practices, you're sequestering carbon, and you're benefiting the people, and you're leaving something intact after the stones go. And I think our industry investing in those kinds of actions will resonate with young consumers and the young at heart as something that makes sense and something worthy of, you know, it adds value, it adds to our products, what we do. So that's a wish. I'm going to implement that, and I would like that to spread as an idea through our industry.
And Laura.
Well, in this case, I would have a wish list. I don't think I'll have the time to mention everything that I dream of here, but I definitely dream of ethically sourced or jewelry to be the highest standard in luxury. I believe that we can agree from what we talk about that the dedication it entails, it is what a luxury piece should be known for. And sometimes when we purchase a luxury item, we assume it is the best, and we fall short in questioning where it comes from, what it really is. So that would be my dream. And the next one would be to have, for starters, Melissa, who considering joining the Mind Challenge, having her collection with us very soon, and also to invite Beth to join the initiative, and all of the brands that are here to join us and to learn more about what is being done.
Beautiful. Any other dreams?
I mean, I think that, first of all, sincere apologies to my panelists, especially to Laura for interrupting you with my technology issues and being a Luddite who can't control my computer. So I apologize to everyone watching. But I wish that more people actually truly cared for the right reasons, and that consumers understood the power of their dollar, and that if they continued to educate on a larger scale. So I can't change people's intentions, and things are changing for the good. But I mean, as a designer, it would just be a dream to walk in and know that what you're buying is okay, and that what you're putting into the world is okay. Because like Brian, you know, we don't use the word sustainable very often anymore either, because nothing's really sustainable. I mean, we're essentially taking things out of the ground and to make beautiful products. And how is anything, do we all need that either, or even? So that conversation is a big one. So I just, you know, my wishes dovetail with Laura as well, is that like we can have dream access to clean materials. And that's only going to continue to happen if we all continue to push and ask questions, and consumers continue to educate themselves.
Yeah, if I could add my wish, which is sort of a continuation of what's happening now. I think it's this openness, being able to have this dialogue. And, you know, what Beth mentioned earlier, I mean, there are so many resources, and I think there's still opportunity for education. And, you know, there are sustainability, you know, options in place. And I think it's just a matter of education. And if we can continue to have this dialogue, and, you know, there are important references, you know, we're certainly one, and just coming together to solve problems rather than poke at them. I think we're making strides in that in itself.
Yeah.
Mine is really just to, I guess, become more fluent in the conversation. So then that way I can really know what I'm asking for, and what I want to commit to our customers, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I guess, you know, it's more education. You know, I guess it's not much of a dream. It's more, it's kind of more of a promise.
Mm-hmm. It works as a dream, Beth, and we are following up with great resources for everyone. So I'm going to hand it back to Sasha. Please do stick around. We have quite a few questions waiting for us. Thank you.
Thank you all. And Beth, that was the perfect segue to my first question, which I love. It's a little lengthy, so just bear with me. And for those of you who can stay with us, there's some great questions, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. This is either to Melissa or maybe Beth or anyone to contribute. Because there are so many factors that go into making jewelry. There's metals, there's stones, labor, etc. Working to become a responsible, ethical, sustainable jewelry brand can be a formidable task. There are so many boxes you have to check. If you truly are committed, but you're still at the beginning stages, say you're already using Fairmined or recycled metals, but you are still working on the stone part of things, looking for suppliers or ethical stones, is it proper or honorable to publicly make claims that you are part of the movement? Or do you have to wait until you are 100% responsible, ethical, sustainable before you can begin making those claims? I'm assuming that so long as one is transparent about their journey towards becoming responsible, the other players in the industry who have been at this for the longest won't mind. I think it is important for those of us who are still at the starting point to begin pushing the message early on in our journey that will enable us to widen our support and help push ourselves and others in the direction of greater ambition. Awesome question.
A great question. May I take a stab?
Yeah.
I think that's such an amazing, insightful question, and one that we struggle with a lot too. We are not people think that we're a completely responsible brand. We're not. It is not possible to be a 100% responsible brand in jewelry. It's not. I mean, it is maybe if you're just making some gold hoops by yourself that are Fairmined in your own studio and you're green certified, that's it. But from a brand and a perspective, like putting jewelry out into the world and sustaining yourself and building your own community and hiring people and scaling a business, it's really challenging. But we are never going to get to the place where we can blow it out on a larger scale unless we start moving the needle. And if we're all sitting around feeling like we're not doing enough and not sharing our resources and not speaking up, we can't create a movement, right? The movement was started because several of us stood up and started asking questions. I didn't even know what options existed when I started asking the questions and started researching them. And then every piece of research we found, we shared, and then we built a community, and then that community grew and grew and grew. And it's grown way past any questions that I could even think to ask. And that's awesome. But that never would have started if we didn't start saying, what are we doing? What are we making? How do we make it better? And that's to my point earlier about living in that glass house is, yes, I can say that we use recycled metal. Is it post-consumer? Is it Fairmined? What is, and Fairmined is newer within my 25-year scope, right? When I first started even being aware or caring, I had very little options available, and then watch the industry shift from like, okay, yes, we can certify that we're not using mercury. Okay, but what about the people? What about the environment? Like what are other options? And then now finally things are starting to become more transparent and more available. But talking about that challenge and that journey, I think inspires other people to have their journey as well. And it also starts to teach consumers, well, what do you mean that's not possible? What do you mean this stone? Like, how do I get a different stone? Well, if it doesn't exist, how do I help you make it exist? Like, we're all in this together and we all have to use our voices collectively. Otherwise, nothing's ever going to change. Because if we all sit in the dark and make it a dirty secret, that's how secrets fester. That's how they become so huge. It's only in the outing of it and the talking about it, what our challenges are, what we're doing, and our challenges to become better and more educated, what those are, that we can change it. And so I say, yes, say what you're doing right, but also, to Brian's point, be completely honest about what you're not doing right, and be completely honest and transparent, and ask, and then if you notice someone that's doing something really cool, reach out to that person and ask, how are you doing that? Right. The journey is a big one, but life is learning. So and as designers, that's an inspiration. So I think speak up and be honest.
Anyone else, or shall I move on?
Okay. I wanted to add that our standard and initiatives like ours don't require that you go 100% all the way. No, we promote that brands can have flexibility and start, just by using, just by asking, just by joining, and trying to do their best. Brands don't have to be 100% and switching their production to Fairmined in order to be a Fairmined licensed brand. It's very important to be, of course, transparent with their claims and tell their consumers their story as best as possible. But designers, as Beth was saying, these stories of growing and learning is something that your customers can relate to and learn together. So there are a lot of flexible options for those that want to start investigating and taking their first steps, and that's, I think, the best thing that we can offer for all designers.
Perfect. Thank you, Melissa and Laura. This is open to anyone to contribute their thoughts. Thank you all for sharing your time today. Pippa Small had a great quote in British Vogue. To paraphrase, she said that if we overstate, we bring everyone down. This makes me wonder, should we avoid the word sustainable when we jewelers are working with metals and gemstones of finite amounts?
Again, the word sustainable is difficult. So The word responsible is better, because as what we're talking about is it's a process that is continually evolving, continually improving. And seriously, we're still in the beginning stages of this whole process as an industry, even though we began really talking about this 15, 20 years ago, but it's still early stages. So avoid the word sustainable, talk about responsible sourcing. And again, just tell the truth, tell what you know, and tell what you don't know. Admit it's okay. We're all in this together.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce Brian's point. It is about responsible sourcing, and if you're sourcing from responsible, and I can speak diamond producers, what you can be assured about is that they the gems are providing high quality jobs, livelihood, community benefits that they otherwise wouldn't have, and they're setting them up for success beyond the operations of those mines. So it is thinking about not just the needs of today, but also the needs for the next generation.
I completely agree. I think also one of the important things aside from sourcing is the manufacturing pieces. As designers and jewelry makers, how and where are our pieces being made? And that's, in this, resources are one piece, but the actual manufacturing making is another piece. And there are many different components within that, not only, how a studio is treating wastewater or but also the people, right? So I think for a long time, what I'm excited about too is the conversation starting to include the community piece. There's been a lot of focus on the environment and how we can save the environment, but environmental, us saving the environment is never going to work unless we also bring people with us. And so that means making sure that whoever's making the jewelry and working in the process is living working wages, benefits, and can actually build a community and have a skill and a job that they can take forward and live well, so that they can make better choices as consumers as well. And it's all interconnected. And that's what's so interesting to continue to learn.
Great. I'm going to just try and get to two more questions that maybe we can answer quickly. One is, how do you find out if your suppliers are mining responsibly? Maybe Brian.
How do you find out? Listen, again, it's so much about personal relationship with your suppliers. And do you trust what they're saying? Are they giving you the full story, or are they making stuff up? And there's no easy way to verify that. Yes, there's RJC groups, but that's limited. There's a lot of people just scouring the planet for stones, and adventurers will go out and go to sources and buy stones and bring it back and sell it and tell you their story. But what is their true concern? What are they investing in themselves? Are they just in it for the money, or is it for the community? It is about community, and the jewelry industry is a vast, large community that includes the miners, the makers, the processors, the stores that sell it. So linking all those together is important. And what's really great about being with this group here is that it's time to begin cross-pollinating with other sectors of the luxury industry and fashion industry. We can all do this together, because the same issues are in the clothing industry or food industry. So all of these things can be linked now, if our goal is to benefit people and planet.
Yes.
Okay, great. Last question, and I'm going to direct it towards Laura. For Fairmined licensed designers and brands who outsource their casting, is it imperative for them to go to a caster or contract manufacturer who's authorized to handle Fairmined, or can they go to any caster or contract manufacturer?
Well, it depends. we have two sourcing models. One requires that 100% of your sourcing is Fairmined metals, and the other one allows you to mix this with different sources of gold. This is the incorporated sourcing model. If you're using the incorporated, well, you can outsource your production wherever. But if you're using the labeled sourcing model, casting specifically is a process of a high risk of traceability. You know, scraps of and traces of other metals can be in there. And so it is recommended that brands do it with authorized suppliers. In many cases, they are not available, so they can have a subcontractor agreement with someone outside of the authorized suppliers, but it is a complicated process. We have to make sure that they are complying with it, with everything, and have a diagram of their process. It is possible, but it's not what is recommended. Specifically in these types of high risk process. If it was stone setting or something else where there is no risk of contaminating it with traces of other metals, but the gold can lose its quality of Fairmined. So.
Thank you, Laura. Well, as Alexandra mentioned, we're going to be sending through some links to different resources and information. And we'd also love to get your feedback on today's conversation so that we can dive deeper into different conversations and have you join those with us. So I just want to thank again Beth and Melissa, our two CFDA members, for joining this conversation, and our incredible experts, Brian, Kristina, and Laura, and also Alexandra for beautifully steering this conversation. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thanks so much. To be continued.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.